Hey y'all, during this episode, you're going to hear some noise in the background. It is my air conditioning. It is hot. The world is currently on fire, and I cannot record this episode without the air on because I'm just going to sweat. So hopefully you can still hear me, and I hope that you still enjoy this episode. Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to another episode. Yay. I'm so glad that you are here. My name's Alecia Renece. Let's get right into it. So I re-released a video that I released maybe 3 years ago called You're Not Lazy, You're Just Tired. And at the end, I put a song on it. And it's a song that I had a great time creating because I was just exhausted. I was beating myself up because I felt bad that I wasn't being as productive as I felt like I should have been. There's a lot of productivity content online. There's a lot of, even in the art space, right? How to make more money, how to get more clients. And I was just inundated with all these things and overwhelmed. I was just so overwhelmed. And it really hit and hurt my self-esteem because I felt like I wasn't doing enough. Like there was never enough that I could do. And I think in a lot of ways, a lot of us are afraid of being labeled lazy or unmotivated or unproductive or listless or all these other words that we're afraid of being labeled because there's a judgment of our character that comes along with these things that says that, oh, the reason why we are experiencing poverty or lack or neglect is because we're not working hard enough to achieve these things, which is not true. It's not true. I realize that we're not lazy. We're just exhausted. We live under capitalism, okay? Under a system that extracts labor, extracts nature, extracts everything until there's nothing left. And then it moves on to another industry and sucks that dry too, right? And so people have been in industry in this country since its foundation, First it was First Nation folks, and then it was enslaved Black folks or African folks and indentured servants. So the foundations of this country has always been labor. And so if the foundations of this country, if what's most prized is labor or what's most, profitable is labor, then when we opt out of labor, we automatically feel like we're opting out of society. We're opting out of the American dream. We're opting out of people's respect and people's understanding of human and nature and community and all these other things, right? Because when we're born into this world, from a young age, we're taught either to be consumed or to consume. Our labor, our time, our efforts have to be consumed, and we get paid through the labor that we do, and how much money we earn equals how valuable we are. And I think back to even enslavement, right? Quite literally for Black folks and indentured servants and, indigenous folks, our literal worth and value was based on how much labor we did for other people. So unraveling from that identity, from overworking and overstretching and burning ourselves out to a crisp to try to win people's affirmation and respect, right, is hard. It's difficult. And it's even more difficult when you consider the ramifications of you not working as an enslaved person. So during enslavement, if you didn't work enough, you were whipped, you were harmed, you had pieces of your body cut off, you were sold different places. You faced a lot of trauma. And so that fear that enslaved folks have been running from, we're still running from that same fear. It might not be being whipped or being sold, right? But it might be you being ostracized from your family and your friends. It might be people looking down on you or people being less likely to help you because they think that if you're poor, you deserve it somehow because you didn't work hard enough. We literally use people's financial status to determine whether or not they're worthy of our respect, of our time, our commitment, right? Our love. And it really has shown me that a lot of us have been traumatized by capitalism, so much so that we are so deathly afraid of being lazy, of being unmotivated, of being seen as unproductive and all these other words, right? But what are we really afraid of? Is it really that we're afraid of not doing enough? Is it really that we're afraid of, not being productive enough? In some ways, I think yes, but in other ways, I think it's the surface to the real answer, right? Just below that surface or a little deeper, we'll find that we actually fear other people's judgments. And I use this example all the time because I can feel it when I talk about it. I have been in places where I am lounging, right? I'm home and somebody starts busying themselves and working. And I might be tired, but I'm sitting down. But because I see someone else working, I feel like, oh, well, I guess I got to get up and busy myself too. I'm afraid of being seen not working. I'm afraid of being seen as lazy. I'm afraid of being caught. We're afraid of being caught by somebody not being productive and the ramifications that might come from that. It might be their judgment, or them saying something sly or shady out their mouth when we're just exhausted. Okay. We are exhausted. So what is the definition of laziness? The definition of lazy is being unwilling to work or use energy. That's the literal definition. And so even this definition is incomplete, not incomplete. Even this definition is incomplete because being unwilling to work or use energy isn't necessarily a bad thing. There's a negative connotation to lazy. I don't think that I've ever heard of lazy as opposed to like lazy river maybe, but I don't think I've ever heard lazy being used in a positive way. I think when people say lazy, they assume like, oh, this person is not working. This person has no goals, no dreams, no aspirations. This person, is annoying, uses up all my resources, these kinds of things, right? But that is such an incomplete definition. I was watching Stephanie Perry's live, I think maybe last weekend, and she talked about laziness a little bit and how like we should add that caveat. It's like, no, being unwilling to work or use energy on things I don't want to work or use energy on. And that is a game changer. Like that kind of completes the definition for me because it shows that I am not in control of whether or not someone determines whether or not I'm lazy. I'm not. It's not really up to me. Like I can try to outwork and outrun and outpace the label of lazy, but just because I exist in a Black woman's body, there are already people who assume that I am lazy, even though I am exhausted. Okay, I'm recovering from burnout and exhaustion, but there are people who see me in my body as I am, not knowing me, not knowing what I do, not even being interested in that. But because I reside in a Black woman's body and because of racism in America, they assume that I'm a Black woman and therefore I am lazy. And because I am in a Black body, right, I have an understanding culturally that to be seen resting as a Black person is seen as criminal. Like there's all these laws about loitering and sitting around and how, oh, y'all must not be up to any good because you're resting your body, you're sitting somewhere, you're standing in one place, you're gathering in one place, right? And this country sees its citizens, all of us, as workhorses and machines. This country does not see us as human, and humans need rest. Even I have a difficult time resting without guilt. There's always something to do. There's always some goals to pursue or things to achieve. And honestly, it never ends. It never ends. And, we only get 24 hours in a day. 8 of those hours you're supposed to be sleep. Supposed to be. No judgment, but supposed to be. You're supposed to be sleep, not factoring in time with your friends or time with your family or, just hobbies and these kinds of things. But we think that every single waking hour is supposed to be dedicated to labor and work. Like that's the culture in this country. And that if you're not working, then you're wasting your time. If you're not working, then you are lazy. There's a whole group of people talking about some, rise and grind. You know what I'm saying? Like rise and grind, or I'll sleep when I die. Like these kinds of things, right? Where hustling and grinding and working yourself to a pulp is celebrated. It's celebrated. And if you express how exhausted you are, people will guilt or try to guilt you into more labor. Just like that example I gave. If I'm sitting down after a long, hard day at work and somebody around me is like, okay, well, let's, there's more stuff to do. Let's go to this place. Let's go get the groceries. Let's X, Y, and Z. It's like, do we have to do that today? Do we have to do that right now? Is the world going to fall apart if I don't do this chore right now? Probably not. Probably not. And a lot of times we put off things because we are tired. I gave that example in the previous video about procrastination and how procrastination is a sign that you are tired or overwhelmed or something, right? We see procrastination as a flaw, like, oh, you're wrong for procrastinating. You need to take action right now. And if you're not taking action, then you're wrong. When really it's like, no, why are we procrastinating? What's going on in our minds? And that's what I really want to get into. That's what I really want to get into today. Going back, talking about how Black folks are going to be labeled as lazy no matter what, I want to read you this article from this place in Greenville, South Carolina, Wednesday, October 2nd, 1918, okay? The title of this article is called Negro Women to be Put to Work. And underneath, the subtitle says, City Ordinance Soon Be Passed Requiring Them, as in Black women, to be regularly employed. So this goes on to say, regardless of whether they want to or have to, able-bodied Negro women in Greenville who are not regularly employed are to be put to work, put in jail, or fined heavily. At its special meeting yesterday afternoon, City Council discussed the situation with regard to this class of loafers. Okay, listen to these words. This class of loafers at some length, and it seemed that all members of council were agreed that steps should be taken to compel them to engage in some useful occupation. I'm just saying that for emphasis, okay? It was decided that an ordinance, similar to the one now enforcing requiring all bodied men to work at least 5 days per week, should be passed with regard to these women. Such an ordinance would be prepared and voted on at the next regular meeting of council. Okay, so what are they saying? Basically, Black women are not allowed to rest. They were trying to, in Greenville, South Carolina, make it illegal for able-bodied, using air quotes, able-bodied Black women Negro women, black women, to have to work. So the reason why you may feel like you're not allowed to rest, the reason why you might feel like you're doing something wrong, the reason why you might feel like you're doing something illegal by resting is because quite literally, this was the attitude and sentiment towards black folks in general. I'm going to put the link to the article so that you all can read it. It's from newspapers.com. But even the language they used, this class of loafers, meaning that if you're a black woman, you are put in a class and they automatically assume that you're a loafer. What is the definition of loafer, Alecia? Let's look it up. The definition of loafer, based on the Collins Dictionary, says it's a noun and it's a person who avoids work or an idler. If that wasn't enough, let me read you some synonyms, okay? Idler, layabout, good for nothing, never do well, do nothing, lounger. So like you get the sentiment felt towards black women, that they were not allowed to rest. And like they said, it was a law passed that black men were required to work 5 days a week. And the article goes on to say that a number of complaints have come to members of council from Negro women who are not at work and who refuse employment when it is offered them. Okay, like you're doing me a favor, right? Like they're refusing employment when it's offered to them. Why are you offering employment to people who are not interested in working? The result, and I'll continue, the result being that it is exceedingly difficult for families who need cooks and laundresses to get them. Okay, we're talking about the white families, okay? So they're saying that because black women refuse to work when offered, white women are having difficulties finding cooks and laundresses to get them. Now, my Aunt Eunice was a laundress. She worked her first job. She told me she worked cleaning people's clothes. It is not an easy job, okay? That job is hard. You're doing things all day. You're folding, you're washing, and especially back then where they didn't have the technology that we have now, it was a full-time job. I want to give a trigger warning, just because it just gets really awful as we continue to read. But I'm just going to keep reading. It says, wives of colored soldiers getting a monthly allowance from the government have, a number of them, declined to work on the ground that they can get along without working, according to reports. Like, imagine that. I continue, others have flatly refused jobs without giving any reason whatever, while still others pretend that they are employed when, as a matter of fact, they derive a living from illegitimate means. And I'm putting that in quotes. So, okay. So these black women didn't need to work because they were getting money from their husbands who were in the service. They also were fine, like they were fine, these specific women. But also they're assuming that if they don't want to work for a white family, then they have to be acquiring means from illegitimate means. So you're demonized for not working, literally. So the last paragraph of this article says, the proposed ordinance will require them all to carry a labor identification card showing that they are regularly and usefully employed, and the labor inspectors and police will be charged with the duty of rigidly enforcing the law. So nothing has changed, my point. Nothing has changed. But there are so many things in this article that I do want to talk about that I wasn't even planning on it. So even this idea of being lazy is amazing to me because they are literally saying that without black women, their houses would fall apart. They said that they had problems washing their own clothes, cooking their own meals, watching their own children. Okay? But we're lazy? That doesn't make any sense to me. And that goes back to enslavement. Black folks who were enslaved were always called lazy for not meeting whatever unrealistic mark that their enslavers had for them to meet. They were not lazy. They were the ones doing the work. What is lazy, though, is y'all going across the sea to grab some folks from the continent of Africa to bring back across the sea and the ocean just to avoid doing the work that you should do by yourself. That is lazy. Right? And so we look at this article and we see how they feel about black women. Like, oh, if you're not working, then you must be lying. If you're also like, it's just so much. I am so emotional right now. Like I'm so triggered. And so I'm all over the place, but please excuse me. But I'm just so disgusted by this article, the tone of this article. I mean, I'm not necessarily surprised because it is giving 1918 very much in Greenville, South Carolina. But at the same time, it's like, oh, so you already come into this article already having an opinion about the people that you're writing about. There's like no objective anything here. Because if we really looked at this article, we would see that the lazy people are not the black women who refuse to work. The lazy people are the white women who have to hire help into their home who don't want to do that stuff themselves. And I'm not against help. Please don't misunderstand me. I am for hiring help if you want to get help, okay? I have no problem with that. But this is enslavement. This is not you hiring, a maid service. This is not you hiring someone to do your laundry for you, like to pick up your laundry and take it and do it and bring it back. We're talking about people who were exploited and seen as less than, okay? And that sentiment that they wrote in that article, that sentiment about Black folks and Black women being lazy, has not changed. It has not changed. So it makes sense why we feel guilty for resting, because our Black bodies were brought here to work. Our Black bodies were not brought here to rest, right? And so people, white folks specifically, see us in our Black bodies and assume that if we are not working, then we are lazy. If we are not laboring and hustling and grinding, then we're not working, and therefore we are lazy. So I want you to free yourself from this lazy label, because it was not created by you. It was not given to yourself by yourself. It was something handed down from generation to generation. And so what happens is, because our ancestors were afraid of being labeled lazy, they overworked and they overdid. And so then they passed that same thing on to their own children. And so then we started being the enforcers and the enslavers of our own home, not letting the kids rest, right? Not letting the kids lounge around. Like, oh no, the devil, what is it? Like the idle hands or the devil's playground, something like that. Like, what are we talking about? People need rest. You are human. But Black women have not been seen as human. Black people have not been seen as human. And even today, I don't really care. Like, citizens, the lay people, probably like the one you're listening to, like you and me, okay? We were not seen as humans. We were never brought here to be human. We were here to be brought in as workhorses. And so unlearning that and unraveling from that, like I said, is really difficult, but it's not your fault. And it's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult to navigate and try to figure out, different definitions and different things. But I hope that this episode is helpful in that way, that we can start to move forward and stop condemning ourselves for being human. Literally, they were proposing a law that Black women would have to present and explain to them why they deserve to rest, why they deserve to be human, why they deserve to not have to labor for someone else. It's wild. It's a wild concept when you think about it in that way. But again, nothing has really changed. Nothing has really changed that much. When a person asks you, what do you do for a living? Or what are you doing today? What's going on? And you say nothing, or you say, oh, I'm not sure, right? Or you say a job that you work that people don't respect, they treat you differently. They treat you differently. And so people are literally triggered seeing Black folks resting, poor folks resting, and we assume that they have not done what they've needed to do to earn rest. Y'all already know how I feel about that. Like, y'all already know that I don't believe in judging someone based on how much money they got in their bank, based on where they work. Like, you don't have to answer none of that to me, but we do the same thing. We make people show their card to us. We enforce that same oppressive and dehumanizing, like, we do the same thing to other people that was done to our ancestors hundreds of years ago, 100 years ago, 10 years ago. Like, we do the same thing to each other, and we really got to stop. We have to stop. Somebody left a comment on my last video and basically said that they don't believe that lazy is a real thing, and I understand. And because of this article and the sentiments of articles just like this, or reading just like this, I have to say that I kind of agree. I kind of, like, I understand. To me, again, being an enslaver of people, that is laziness. That is laziness. Like, that to me is lazy. That to me is unuseful. Okay, that literally is detrimental. However, a person trying their best to get ahead and be human is not lazy. We are expecting ourselves to work like machines. You are not a machine. You are human. But we were brought over here to work as a machine for enslavers. And also, why do we have to earn rest? That is so weird. You can't earn rest. It's not something that you can cash in like a vacation. Like, rest is necessary because you're human. You need sleep to live. Like, we're talking very basic. Like, without sleep, you would die, right? And so this idea of like earning rest is so silly, or earning leisure, or earning play and fun. That is messaging passed down from people who are not us. So in my journal, one of the first questions I asked myself is, what's wrong with being unwilling to work or use energy, especially using that energy for things that we don't need or want to do? At the end of the day, I am only one person. I am only a human with a finite amount of energy every day. How I allocate that energy is up to me. It's not up to you. How I desire to spend my time is really up to me. Like, I'm a sovereign being. The thing is, like, because we were enslaved, and like enslavement is everywhere, and like the what do you call it? The remnants of slavery are everywhere, right? And I mean, slavery never ended. It just changed. That's a whole other conversation for another day. But we see the remnants when we are in each other's business, telling each other what we deserve and what we don't, because we haven't worked hard enough to get it yet. And that's with anything, right? If you haven't worked hard enough, you're not allowed to go on vacation. If you haven't worked hard enough, let's be real, you're not allowed to acquire sick days. At my job, when I worked at a hospital, y'all, At the hospital, I had to earn sick days as if my body cares whether or not I have sick days or not. It's going to get sick if it's going to get sick. You feel me? Like, you're not even treated like a human in that way. You're not even allowed to be sick. But we are our own overseers, and we become the overseers of others. We pass on this harmful and toxic idea that we have a say in what people do in their lives. As long as it's not a detriment or harming other people, what people choose to do with their energy and their time is not my business. It's not my business. And they're allowed to rest, and they're allowed to play, and they're allowed to enjoy their life. But we have been taught that suffering and putting off joy and all these things are more important than actually being a fully realized human being. We don't even see ourselves as human, which is why when we take a break, we feel like we're failing. We feel like we're not enough because we've been taught that you aren't enough unless you are weary and tired and exhausted. The most celebrated person is the most exhausted person, even if they're not loved. So when we talk about Big Mama and them and, you know, our moms and I'm speaking about women specifically, but even like our dads, right? Like, I don't really have a father in my life right now, so I don't really have that experience, but I also see that like fathers overworking to show their love for their family when like really their family just needs them there. You feel me? Or when Big Mama passes away at the funeral, she gave her life for everybody. She was always working, always busy. You know what I'm saying? Even what women are praised for in scripture. I'm thinking about Proverbs 31. People like to use that scripture. I at this point, I'm over it. People like to use that scripture basically to guilt women into overworking and to overdoing. Like, the scripture basically is praising a woman because she's so busy and she's doing all these different things and doing all this different work, you know? There's this idea out there that nobody wants to work anymore, right? And again, talking about being paid enough, that's again another conversation for another day. I'm trying really hard to stay on topic, y'all. But people want to do work that is meaningful. People want to do work that inspires them. People want to do work that fulfills them. And sadly, like in this country, that's almost like the prize. Like you're supposed to suffer for however many long years. And then eventually, then you get to do something that means something to you, right? It's almost like dessert. In my previous video, I talked about wage slavery and I talked about drudgery, which is hard, mindless, back-breaking work. That's what labor feels like for a lot of people. For a lot of people, most folks want to do work that means something to them. And in their jobs now, it just feels like suffering for suffering's sake because the money ain't good. The people still don't treat you no matter how hard you're working. I talked about this before in talking about my working at McDonald's and my experience with working at McDonald's and how I was working so hard. We had a phrase that we would say that the managers would say. I wouldn't say that, but the managers would say, if you can lean, you can clean. If you can lean, you can clean, meaning there is no rest at work. There is no moment of pause at work. You should always be in motion. That is unrealistic. It's unrealistic for anyone. And so now we're at these jobs being afraid of someone cracking the whip, again, running from the fear of being caught not working, being caught not being productive, being caught for a second holding your head down or catching your breath, because that is illegal. You're not lazy. You're intentional about where you're putting your energy. I don't want to work hard. Okay, I've said this before. I don't want to work hard. I think working hard is when we say that, we don't say, I think you should work hard at something you're passionate about. We don't say that. We just think that the act of working hard and exerting a lot of labor and effort makes you worthy. That's what people mean when they say work hard. They mean always be working, hustle, grind, don't stop, sleep when you die, rise and grind. You should always be thinking about work, always be thinking about self-improving, always be thinking about the next thing and the next thing and more and different. And it's just like, enough. I don't want to work hard, at least not the hard that the West platforms, right? We celebrate suffering. Like I said, the one who suffers the most is praised the most, but they're often not loved, nor are they cared for. And I don't want to work hard. I want to be fulfilled. I want to do fulfilling work, meaningful work, impactful work. I want to do work that means something to me. And I don't think that I have to suffer long in order to do those things, right? I want to do things that fulfill me, that bring me joy, that make great impact. And I can't make the impact I want to make if I'm exhausted. If I am exhausted, I can't make the change in the world that I want to make. And I kind of feel like it's set up like that on purpose. Like, we're thrown into drudgery, right? Drudgery. I can never say that word. Drudgery. We're thrown into drudgery to extract our labor, but also extract our energy so that we can't spend the energy that we really want to spend making the change in the world that we want to make. It just feels like it's done on purpose. In order for me to be impactful and effective, I have to rest. I have to be well rested. Capitalism encourages and kind of coerces us, honestly, to always be productive, always labor, and always work. And I want to read from Tricia Hersey's Rest Deck. I pulled a card, literally, when I was writing my notes for this. And the card says, "Divest from capitalism, lay down somewhere." Okay, period. The back of the card says, "When you feel guilt and shame for resting, view it as evidence of your brainwashing via grind culture. Be grateful for this insight and use it to transform the guilt into power. Rest guilt-free, knowing you are following a path to liberation. Rest is your right and an ancient practice. Rest, deprogram, repeat." This really stuck out to me because, like I said, if you're not well rested, you can't dream. If you're not well rested, you can't think of what could be possible. Like, if you are always forced into drudgery, your imagination crumbles, right? Your energy depletes, your self-confidence depletes. And if you have people around you who are reinforcing this idea that if you don't work hard, you don't matter, you'll be chasing the wind, just chasing things that don't actually matter because you just need to be always being busy. And so when we're focusing on being busy, we're just milling about a lot of times, doing things that don't even resonate, doing things that don't even make any sense to us, that don't even touch the thing that we want to do in the world. But because we're either afraid of, and this is real, so hear me out, I understand, because we're afraid of being, not eating. We're afraid of being kicked out of our homes, these kinds of things, because we can't pay, but also because we're afraid of judgment from other people. We need community to reflect back to us that we are worthy outside of the work that we do. That's why I love hanging out with my friends. Like, I love creating and I love making things, but I can get in my head and think, oh, this video has to do well. This thing has to do well, or else I don't have any worth or value. If nobody watches this, if nobody buys this thing, like, I'm still unlearning too, y'all. If nobody supports this thing, then somehow I have failed. If I'm not doing something every single day, then I'm not honoring the gifts that I have. I'm not honoring my ancestors who work so hard. But then I had to sit with that thing and be like, you know what would my ancestors really want from me? My ancestors worked so hard to get me where I am, and I don't believe that they would want me to end my life early, much like their lives were ended early, hustling and grinding and working hard. I feel like it'd be such a slap in the face of my ancestors for me to work so hard and die so young. My ancestors, my granny, my great-grandmother, my grandfather, my grandmother, like, all these people passed away because of ailments, and a lot of them were stress-induced. Even smoking cigarettes, for example, right? My grandmother had breast cancer in both breasts, and eventually she passed away from pancreatic cancer, right? But she smoked because she was stressed. She smoked, and this is why, like, I don't smoke myself, but I also don't condemn people who smoke, and I'm talking like cigarettes and things like that, or people who drink, like people who have to. We talked about this in like the ancestral gifting. A lot of our ancestors were trying to survive. They were trying to get by, and because they were so stressed out, they had these vices, right? They had these things about them, and these things made them sick. These things cut their life short. Granted, they did live into, later age, but I do think that if they were able to care for themselves in the way that every human should be able to care for themselves, they may still be here. Who knows? I truly don't believe that hard work or fear is the greatest motivator. I think joy is, community is, fulfillment, like seeing something you create change someone else's life. Like, these are the things that feel good to us, that re-energize us to go back into the world and to do it all over again. When you're working so hard and getting nothing back, it can feel hard to stay committed to something. It can feel hard to show up cheerful and grateful and things like that, because nobody wants to be grateful for something they don't want. Like, why are we always saying that? Be grateful, like, for things you don't want? You don't have to be grateful for things that harm you. You don't have to be grateful for things that are ending your life. You don't have to be grateful for things that exploit you. You feel me? Resting brings care, it brings clarity, and it brings well-being. And that's why I always say, like, this country is hustling backwards. This country is trying to get as much labor from us as possible for the least amount of money, for the least amount of care and rest. But the thing is, like, you're always going to be churning out, and I'm using air quotes here, slaves, like, for slave wages and slave labor, because you're working them to literal death. Wouldn't it make more sense to care for the people in your country so that your country could do well? But they don't value that because they don't see us as people. So I mean, that's too much like right. The opening line in my song Lazy is, "You're not lazy, you're just tired as hell." You're not lazy, you're just tired as hell. And there's a lot of reason why you're tired. But one of the reasons why you're tired is because you're doing things you don't like, things that deplete your soul, things that are exhausting and depleting. It's too much resistance on your energy and your soul. When there's resistance, you have to put in extra energy to get the thing done. And then we start to feel bad because we're not performing well. And I put performing in quotes because that's exactly what it is. Sorry, y'all, if y'all hear the noise. My air conditioning's on. But then we put on a performance of work, right? And because we feel ourselves performing, we start to feel bad. Why don't I like this? Why am I not good at this? Why can't I just get it together? Ugh, I'm such a lazy person. Ugh, I'm so unmotivated. We become our own abusers, right? And that weighs us down. That guilt and that shame cloak us, because guilt and shame work, y'all. Guilt and shame work. Guilt and shame work so well that we guilt and shame other people into feeling bad that they don't want to work as hard as we want to work to make ourselves feel good. We wrap other people in bondage so that we feel better about ourselves. Or that's happened to us. I know that's happened to me. When I tell folks, like, yeah, I'm an artist and I create art for a living. I sing songs, I write, I have fun for a living. People look at you crazy, okay? People look at you like you have lost your mind. People look at you like you're unmotivated, that like, and they worry for you. They feel bad for you. And in that shame, it makes me kind of recoil. Like, it makes me kind of like, I start to question my own validity. I start to question my own value, my own worth. Shame works. That's how they get us working for the system. Whenever I talk about like anything that's like anti-capitalist or anything that is like talking about honoring people for who they are instead of valuing them for the work that they do for us, a lot of people come from my head because it is triggering. Because if my worth, because we value ourselves and other people based on how much they work for us or work for other people, when you remove that measurement of worth and value, they have nothing. They have nothing to, I'm not saying that they're not worthy or valuable. I'm saying that they have nothing to judge themselves by anymore. There used to be a rubric. The rubric doesn't exist anymore. You feel me? Like when you make them question like they're working, it's a grieving process that happens. And I'll probably reshare that video too. Like, I had to grieve the American dream. I had to grieve the fact that I worked so hard and all I got in return was more work. I had to grieve my ancestors who labored, who had multiple jobs, and all they gave me was more exhaustion. I had to really grieve this dream, this idea that if I worked hard enough, I could finally be respected, I could finally be loved, because it didn't matter. Because I'm in a Black body, people already assume that I am lazy. And instead of trying to like prove to people that I'm worthy and valuable outside of my work, outside of what I do for other people, outside of capitalism, I decided to opt out. And even when I opted out, people still came for my head. And it was so interesting because like, if I'm opting out, right? If I'm opting out of working hard and all these other things, then there's more room for you, right? That's what you would think. Like, oh, if I'm opting out of the rat race or the American dream, then there's more room for you to because there's less competition. But no, people see you and see your body and says you must work. People think that they almost have ownership over you and your body and your mind and your creativity and your energy. And they can tell you where you're supposed to funnel your energy to. And if you don't do that, then you're not worthy in their eyes. You're lazy. What does that sound like? That sounds like enslavement. That sounds like we are repeating the rhetoric of the people who enslaved us, harmed us. I mean, I don't even want to list all of the things that they did to us, but like they've really messed up our minds. They've really messed up our minds. In a country where we value money over everything, over love, over care, over kindness, over generosity, right? It's hard to value yourself when you realize as a person, you don't fit in this. I don't value money. I understand I have to get money to survive because I'm here, right? But I value connection. I value love. I value care. I value art. I value honesty. I value authenticity. And all that stuff does not get you the gold star, right? All that stuff is supposed to be extra. You feel me? So when we feel weighed down by that shame, we feel heavier, which means that it takes more energy to even get going. We're always exerting so much energy. Shame takes so much energy from us. And so the question I want to ask you is, what is exhausting you? What is exhausting you? Is it putting your joy and rest on hold? Is it delaying your dreams and ideas? Is it saying yes to things you want to say no to? Same. Same. When we look at those answers, what is exhausting me? What is draining me? What is shame saying to me? What do I feel shame about? When we interrogate those things, we get to the heart of the thing. And even when you ask yourself, what could I be? What might I be instead of lazy? Because I feel like lazy is a lazy label because it really doesn't get to the heart of the problem. It really doesn't ask why. It really doesn't interrogate anything. And so we just lazily apply like, oh, this person is just lazy. But you know what? This is not even in my notes, but like when I think of being called lazy, it usually is a projection, or it's a way that people shame other people because they too want to rest, right? When your homegirls is calling you lazy, or when your auntie or them is saying, oh, you're just lazy because you don't want to help me do X, Y, and Z, what they're really saying is that they don't want to do it either, but they feel obligated to do it. And since they have to do it, you have to do it too. Right. And I don't think there's anything wrong with helping people do things. I don't believe in just being like, oh, sorry, you got to do that by yourself. No, if I'm able and willing, like, sure. If I'm not exhausted, why not? I'll help. Right. But I have to rest in order to have extra energy to help you. So you calling me lazy is actually shooting yourself in the foot, because if all the community members were well rested, we could all get help. We wouldn't all have to do it on our own. We put so much load on ourselves, especially because of individuality. We think we have to do everything by ourselves. We think that hard work means pulling yourself up by your own bootstraps. That's never how it was supposed to be. That is white supremacist thinking. That individuality, like, it can't fly, it can't sustain itself, it can't survive. But then also, when people who hire us, or people who, what is what I'm looking for, who enslave us, I'm going to say that because I'm talking about things that are exploiting people. When someone who is exploiting you is calling you lazy, it is a projection. They are literally manipulating reality to make you think that you're the one in the wrong. No, it's the person exploiting you, the person harming you. They're the lazy ones. And so they need to retake that label and give it to themselves, because they, the ones who have used this word to shame people, enslave people, and also make it illegal for people to rest, hello, they're the lazy ones. It's not you. It can't be you. Someone said, and it may have been Tricia Hersey, I'm not sure, but I have never met a lazy Black person. I think that people become lazy when they exploit people, when they use people, when they enslave people, when they take from people and give nothing back, when they have no intentions of giving back what they've taken from somebody else. That is laziness. It is not you being tired. It is not you not feeling like doing something, okay? That's you being a human. You're not evergreen. We all have seasons of exhaustion, seasons where we're supposed to do as little as possible. Shout out to Stephanie Perry. We all have seasons where, like, we just don't feel like it. And because we're looking for a good enough reason to not do it, we feel like we have to, like, come up with some good reason. And some people lie, or some people just go ahead and do it because, like, oh, well, I don't have a good enough reason. So, like, you saying no is a good enough reason. You saying no because I don't feel like it, or I'm tired, I don't feel well, or like I don't really have the energy or the capacity for it, is a valid reason. But just like that article I read to you earlier, if other people judging you don't seem like your reason is valid, then they'll deem you lazy. That's what I wanted to say. Okay, so circling back, right? What could you be instead of lazy? You're not lazy. You are overwhelmed. You're exhausted. You're anxious. You're afraid. You're overworked. You're in need of joy, play, and community. You're depressed. You're lonely. You're unmotivated, uninterested. You're inspired by something else. There's a range. There's so many different reasons why you don't feel like doing something. And not one of them has to be laziness. The fact that we say, like, oh, I'm just gonna lay around today. I'm so tired. I'm just gonna be lazy today. No, you're not. You're going to give your body care, because even rest is work. If you are existing, you are exerting energy. It is impossible for you not to exert energy. It doesn't make any sense. Resting is work. When you're resting, your body is going to work because you're still enough for your body to repair itself and to love you well. When you live in a country where you have to work to literally survive, how could you ever be lazy? It doesn't make sense. It feels like we've been gaslit. That's what it really feels like. And what is the definition of gaslight? To manipulate someone using psychological methods into questioning their own sanity or powers of reasoning, okay? They're literally gaslighting us and telling us that we're the ones that are lazy, when really it's like, no, honey, you're overworking me. When I talk about the things that I talk about on my channel and how unfair it is to the working class, the first instinct is for people to defend a system that is destroying them. That is their first instinct. We're not well. We're not okay. But I also understand, because gaslighting works. This manipulative tactic works. When you literally manipulate someone or lie to someone, you're manipulating their reality. You're changing their reality. Like, they're like, oh, what I think and what I feel is not real. It's what you're saying. Like, that's how gaslighting works. You're doing all the labor. How are you the lazy one? Now we can get to a different conversation about like being lazy with love or being lazy with care. But right now we're going to rest here for a second. The pace at which we work and the volume is not normal, nor is it sustainable. You cannot be human under capitalism. Even if you see yourself as a human, they see you as a machine. And you're not a machine. Humans actually need a lot of rest. We need a lot of things that we're not given. We need a lot of things that we're not granted. Good food, clean water, good community, safe housing, right? But rest is foundational for your health and well-being. Again, without rest, you die. We have all been conditioned and indoctrinated, and that's why we fear, right? And so this is not a call out. This is like a calling in. And I don't mean it in a passive aggressive way. I mean, really, let's come in together and think about this thing. Let's interrogate this thing and tear it to the root and really get to the root of why we feel like we're going to get in trouble if we're not working. We also believe that being poor is like a moral failure, and it's something like, oh, we just haven't worked hard enough. Like, we just need to work harder. And I'm here to tell you, based on my ancestors and my own life, okay? Working hard hardly pays off when there are people hell-bent to exploit you, meaning to pay you as little as possible to work you as hard and as long as possible. You being underpaid is not your fault. You being undersupported is not your fault. You being treated like you're a machine and not a human is not your fault. It is just the way of the land. So take a deep breath. Let's take a deep breath. Let's just breathe in and breathe out. You, my dear, are not lazy. You're just tired. We have to set ourselves free. We can no longer be our own enslavers. We can no longer be our own abusers or our own overseers or the overseers of other people as well. We have to start unraveling from overworking, thinking that we can find our worth and our value in busying ourselves or in the approval of other people. If you don't get anything else from this episode, I want you to walk away with this. You are worthy. You have always been worthy, and you will always be worthy. And if you never did another thing, you would still be worthy. This guilt, the shame you feel is not yours. It is not yours. It is something that has rooted itself into you, into your thinking. It's somebody else's thoughts. Because why wouldn't you think of yourself as anything other than lovely, anything other than amazing, anything other than impactful and important? Your worth and value is not wrapped up in the work that you do for other people. It's not wrapped up in how much money you make. It's not wrapped into your title at your job. It's not wrapped into none of that. All that stuff is made up. Just think, it is 2024. About 300 years ago, none of this stuff existed in the first place. I'll say 400 plus. Like, none of this stuff existed in the first place. All of this is brand new. Why are we judging ourselves based off of a system of a country that was founded 300 years ago, when your DNA goes back, when you are ancient, when you are spirit? You are beyond this. So no, you are not lazy. You're just tired, and you deserve rest. You deserve love. You deserve care. You deserve play. You deserve fun. You deserve to see yourself as not a product to consume, but as a holy and sacred being. I hope that you all enjoy this episode. Please let me know what you think, and I will talk to you all in the next episode. All right? Keep loving yourselves, love each other, and I'll see you again.